نحن وأنا بالأخص يعني قلت لك نحن أنا من حمص، ريف حمص الجنوبي، قرية الضبعة. أنا يعني أنا وأهلي وعائلتي نزحنا من الحرب من القرية. تعرف العالم كلها بتعرف الوضع بسوريا، يعني ما في داعي نحكي، حرب ودمار وقتل وتشريد. فنزحت أنا وعائلتي أنا والأهل على لبنان حصرا.
Okay.
يعني
So he left. So Abdulhamid is saying that they had to leave this village in Homs where they lived with his family, and they had to move to Lebanon due to the war and the destruction that they have witnessed. Okay.
يعني نزحنا حصرا عن لبنان كون قريتنا يعني منطقة حدودية مع لبنان.
Okay.
فلجأنا ونزحنا على لبنان. فبلبنان يعني تجوزت وكونت أسرة عائلية الحمد لله، وكان الوضع يعني مو سيء كتير بلبنان، بس الحمد لله يعني عشنا الحمد لله ماشي الحال، بس أوضاع يعني صعب شوي.
Okay.
المعيشة العمل.
Okay, so although they moved to Lebanon, it wasn't very easy with his family, and it's right on the border of Syria where they moved to, and it was very difficult, but still the quality of life wasn't that great, and also he got married there, so this is where he met Safa, so that's nice.
يعني عشت بلبنان تقريبا، ضليت فترة أنا وأهلي بالبداية، وبعدين تزوجت وكونت عائلة الحمد لله، الله رزقني أطفال الحمد لله. وضليت فترة يعني تقريبا 7 سنوات بلبنان. فكان يعني الوضع بالبداية كان يعني مليح، بس بعدين صار سيء.
Okay.
وللأسوأ كل ماله بلبنان الوضع.
Okay, so after he got married, he's saying God blessed him with lovely children, but things started to get worse there. It wasn't that easy at all after 7 years. So you lived there for 7 years. Okay.
بصراحة أنا يعني مريت بوضع صعب شوي بلبنان، وضع الصحي، وأنا كان عندي يعني لحد الآن يعني معي إعاقة. أنا بن سوريا أثناء الحرب صار معي إعاقة شظية، يمكن بتعرفوا هذا الكل إنه فات شظية بإجري، يعني صار عندي إعاقة بجسمي.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So when he left Syria as well, he had to live with a disability that he had that is in his foot, because he had the shrapnel that exploded actually inside his foot into many different little pieces. So that has been really difficult for him, on top of moving to another country as well.
بلبنان يعني كان علي صعب شوي الحياة، المعيشة صعبة بسبب الإعاقة بإجري. وتزوجت الحمد لله مثل ما قلت لك، وكونت أسرة عائلة، الله رزقني أطفال. ومع هيك يعني مرقت بفترة يعني صعبة كتير. كان عندي حمودي وبتول كانوا بحاجة لعمل جراحي، يعني مرقت بوضع سيء، بس الحمد لله يعني الله عاني الحمد لله، وعملت لهم عمليات، يعني وضعي ساء كتير.
Okay, so even when he was in Lebanon, he's saying that I've gone through very difficult times, not only with my own health situation that didn't allow me to work much, but also my children, those children, Batul and Mohammed, they had to go through a surgery, and that was really difficult because we know how expensive it is. عم بقول إنه كتير غالي المعيشة بلبنان.
طبعا.
It's very expensive. It's not NHS.
يعني
Yes.
غالي، وشغل ما في شغل، ما في عمل، وكان وضعنا سيء لأنه نحن بالنسبة لنا كان داخلين لبنان يعني بطريقة غير شرعية. انجبرنا ندخل. واللي داخل بطريقة غير شرعية يعني وضعه صعب كتير.
So because also they entered Lebanon kind of illegally, and when you are you don't have legal papers in Lebanon, you can be fined a lot of money, and you can't find work because also you need a visa, a work visa or something like that. So it was so difficult. So So you're always on your nerves because you're there illegally.
yeah.
Yeah.
فأنا يعني أنا بالنسبة لي بقول الحمد لله رب العالمين، إلا ما يجي نهار الله يفرج علينا. يعني عانينا كتير الحمد لله، بس أملنا برب العالمين كان كبير والله فرج علينا الحمد لله. لحد يوم اتصلوا فينا المفوضية الأمم المتحدة للاجئين
Yeah.
وخبروني إنه بتحب السافر، يعني عرض علي فكرة السفر. فيعني كنت أنا يعني لقيتها فرصة.
Okay. So the speakers for the UN in Lebanon approached Abdul Hamid and asked him, would you like the idea of traveling, leaving Lebanon? And he said that was something that I really wanted, and I liked the idea of that. Yeah.
يعني بصراحة لقيتها فرصة لا أخرج وأطلع من وضعي السيء كان بلبنان ووضعي الصحي. يعني أنا كان معي تلك إعاقة ولا مشان وعلم الأولاد. يعني لقيتها فرصة يعني ما صارت لي أبدا.
It was an opportunity that he never envisaged to have, and it was great because he was thinking first about his disability, also for the children to be educated properly. Yeah.
فيعني كان ردي فورا على المفوضية إنه أنا موافق، المهم أطلع من لبنان.
He said, I really agree, I really want that. The main thing is I want to get out of Lebanon.
يعني بدي بس أطلع لأنه الوضع سيء مثل ما قلت لك. قلت الحمد لله يعني إن شاء الله بيسرها معي إن شاء الله، وبقدر عالج نفس حالي، يعني عالج قدمي المتصابة وأقدر أعلم الأولاد، أقدر إذا مرضوا أقدر هون يعني داويهم لا سمح الله. يعني إن شاء الله ما بصير شيء، بس إنه يعني قلت برا أفضل.
Yeah. So he said. So he saw also. Of course, it's going to be much better when I go abroad, because first I can hopefully find a solution to the pain I have in my foot and sort it out. And also for the children, if anything happened to them medically, at least I know that they can be looked after medically without having to think about money or any danger.
رغم انه كانت علينا يعني الطلعة، يعني إننا نفسيا صعب كتير، بدنا نفارق الأهل الأخوة الأصدقاء. بدنا نبعد عن كل شيء.
Yeah, although on the other side, as nice as the opportunity is, we had to think, of course, we're going to be separated from our family, our parents, our cousins, our friends, and that separation was very difficult to consider as well.
بس رغم هيك أنا يعني مضطر.
Despite all this, I felt I was obliged
لا
to do
أقدر
that.
أعيش أولادي عيشي يعني كريمة وأعلمهم. يعني أنا بصراحة يعني أنا عايش كرمال أطفالي. بتعرف الأهل يعني بيعملوا كل شيء كرمال الأولاد.
So as a parent, I felt I had to take that decision to move out of Lebanon, because the first thing that comes to us as parents is to look after the children and get the best welfare and the best benefits for them. Yeah.
يعني فمثل ما قلت لك كانت يعني غصة كبيرة إنه نترك الأهل والأصدقاء يعني كل هالشيء هذا كان صعب علينا. بس رغم هيك إنه قلت كرمال أطفالي ووضعي السيء. يعني أنا لو ضالب بلبنان كان ما بقدر أشتغل كوني عندي إعاقة برجلي ووضعي كان سيء. حتى يعني حاليا وضع سيء لدرجة بلبنان على الكل. يعني مو بس على السوريين، يعني السوريين صعب كتير، بس على السوري واللبناني كونه بلبنان الوضع سيء فعلا سيء كتير. يعني أنا بقول الحمد لله إني خلصت وطلعت صراحة.
So he's very grateful, because the situation in Lebanon was getting much worse because of the political corruption and everything, and that it was so bad for everyone, for the Syrians and for the Lebanese, that it was really good to leave the country. It was a great opportunity, and I'm glad I took this opportunity. Through the United Nations, that made many tests to them, and he had to travel at night sometimes because the situation was quite bad. So he can do all of these things, and that took about 3 to 4 months, and until they specified the day when he'd be traveling with his family. Although he knew that that's coming obviously from a group, a social group, like and that these are the ones that will be sponsoring him. And he said, fine, anything, but that's fine.
My name's Anna Ritallett. And I'm Jude.
My name's Bea Shrewsbury.
I'm Alan Mungden.
Jane Howard.
I'm Glenn Winchester.
I'm Sue Top.
I'm Caroline Cox.
My name's Elaine Johnson.
Hello, my name is Hannah.
The first step was to see if it was something that enough of my friends were also interested in. I was pretty confident that most people were also at a similar point to myself, and that very much proved to be the case.
I joined the charity right at the start. I had very early conversations with Jude about who else might be good to get involved, and she had heard of this community sponsorship, and yeah, she involved me quite early on.
I think it was the idea that we were actually going to do something, that there was we'd all felt a sense of disempowerment and real grave concern about what was going on, yet we didn't really, signing a petition was one thing, but we weren't actually doing anything.
Over the last 8, 9, 10 years while the Syrian crisis has been on, watching that on the news, I've donated, but always felt like, well, is there anything else I could do, but didn't know what.
Just seeing all the news reports and seeing the scale of it was so huge and so petrifying, and it felt something that could be a massive difference to even over a very small amount of people, but it could be something that could be so life-changing for people.
I just also felt like we wanted to be part of a community that was welcoming to refugees, because at that time, you know, the climate had been really quite hostile.
There was a lot in the press about what was happening in the Mediterranean. And I guess like any of the other volunteers that went out there at that time, it was because of the perception of how, at that time, they were reporting how awful it was for the refugees. And I just felt that maybe there was something I could help with as a volunteer.
And a lot of people in the group had been to Calais, so knew what the situation was. And so I didn't really know what the situation was, and luckily found someone who was going to Calais, and I, tagged along, and it was just incredible. So I went for a week to Calais and was able to go to all the different organisations who worked there. And when I came back, I started fundraising and taking donations, and I've never looked back since.
Every refugee experience is different, and every refugee I met was different. So I can't generalise. It's very hard to generalise about who a refugee is. They are people like you and me who have done exactly what we would do if we were in the situation they were in, and they've picked up their things and fled to safety with their children mainly. So either it's a lot of people end up being unaccompanied children or young people because they've lost the rest of their family on their way.
We felt that so many things were going in the wrong direction, and we wanted to do something about it. And we started meeting once a month, a whole group of us, and just talking about things we could do, going into small groups. And I suppose in a way this is a sort of spin-off of those meetings.
The first thing that we had to do is to spend quite a lot of time understanding what it was that we had to do. And there was a fair amount of information out there in terms of support organisations and sort of pamphlets and stuff on websites and so forth. And it was apparent that the two main challenges were to raise £9,000 and to find a house.
So there's quite a detailed application form that you complete. So there's a certain amount, you have to have a certain amount of money in the bank, £9,000 for one family, to support one family. That was a sort of minimum. So that was where our efforts first started. But to be honest, we got there quite quickly. There was such a lot of support.
We had events which were really well attended, so we were getting the word out there and immediately getting money given to us by the really generous local community who, and again, that's really enthusing, when people are really wanting to support you. They might not have the time to volunteer or not want to, but people are supporting you in their own way.
It's been incredibly positive, I'd say. I made one small mistake, whereas I boosted a post when we had our crowdfunder film. And it said 40-mile radius. I thought, oh, well, that'll get a bit further out in Cornwall. And it went much further than that, and all these bots, you know, really negative comments, which we were really quite shocked about. And so we've never done that again.
Obviously, there is that raising awareness, and there's that educational side of it, and just helping people think about it, having those conversations. You know, we went to Source FM do Park Live, so we were attending those every month and having conversations with people who had never really kind of thought that it was something that was going to touch them, that they might be able to have an impact on. So that obviously is, it's just creating a dialogue really with lots of different people.
We were given so much to furnish the house. You know, anytime I'd put a call out on Facebook, immediately we would have, I've got this, and you can have, you know. So people have been incredibly generous. So the fundraising was to get that initial 9,000, but you know, luckily we had a really good crowdfunding film, and that helped to explain what we were doing. And then anytime we would have an event like a jumbo sale, or we had some events on the moor where we set the tent up like we had done at Park Life, and just talking to people.
Community sponsorship is fantastically kind of it doesn't drain resources from anywhere else. We are like a mini social services where it shows what a community can just do together without requiring external services, external funding on the whole.
The next key thing is you have to source accommodation for the family, and that accommodation has to be approved and appropriate. So again, that was, you know, took some time. So in the application form, you complete a whole set of questions about what services you're going to provide and how, about the costs of those, about the accommodation, about liaison that you've done with schools, with health services. Provide information about the local area and about how your group is constituted and how it's going to support the family.
As the health lead, I linked in a lot with the local surgery, got to know the head receptionist who'd worked with another refugee family, and we set up a lot of things to be ready for when the family came, like a family assessment, health checks for the family, setting up all their paperwork and that sort of thing.
Before we even knew who the family were, we made contact with the local authority to find out where places were available in certain schools in the Falmouth and Penryn area. And then once we knew that, then the Home Office were contacted about what age group that we'd be able to accept in the Falmouth and Penryn area.
The application process, I suppose, gelled me anyway. For me, the application process, having to be really specific on this form, the Home Office needed to know certain details of how are we going to do this, how are we going to provide 8 hours of English language tuition for each adult, where was this going to happen, and how would you provide the teaching for that?
So it's quite detailed work, and there's a lot of liaison with the local authority as well, because they have to approve the application before it's submitted to the Home Office. So again, I'd got a background working within the public sector, so I was able to sort of broker some of those relationships that we needed to have with the local authority to support the application. The school has been fantastic, the doctor's been fantastic, everybody's been really supportive of what we've been doing, and that's really amazing.
Once you've been matched with the family and just 2 people within the group are given that very personal information at the beginning so that we're informed and can be sure that this family is a good match and that we can support them. They don't have any needs that can't be met locally and so forth. So we have a certain scant picture of this family who are soon going to become such a big part of our lives. And then it's between 6 and 8 weeks when that family actually arrive, and they're not already in the UK, they're coming straight from where they've been living, which tends to be for sponsorship groups, Jordan, Lebanon, around those areas.
You know, when we saw their photos as well, it's like, you know, because it had been a kind of an abstract, you know, mission in a way, but that was like, yes, now we know, you know, we put the faces to our family, and it was great excitement.
We saw a photo at some point, I can't remember what time, at point we saw a photo, and that was just really amazing, thinking, oh my God, there they are, they're on the other side of the world, and that's them. And that was really exciting to sort of see what they look like.
Oh, it's exciting, but also the house wasn't quite ready, and suddenly there was this big push to get the house ready, and also it sort of concentrates the mind a lot to what does this actually mean that the family is going to come here, and what should we have ready? And
obviously there's like quite anticipation of what are the family going to be like. Oh my gosh, you know, how are they going to cope? And then realising there's such little things that you know about living in England and Cornwall in the wet, but if you're a family who've come from Syria or Lebanon, you don't realise the importance of wearing socks at all time, or it will rain, you will leave the house and it will rain, and you will have to have a decent coat on, not a nice little sort of jacket. So all of these really unexpected practical things, which I think we hadn't really anticipated to be an issue.
It was amazing really, because suddenly it felt real. And it was it had taken quite a long time to get to that point. It took us, you know, a good 9 months to get charitable status approved, for example. And then there was a sort of subsequent period of time getting the application together. And then suddenly it was like, yeah, our application's been approved. And within a couple of weeks, here's a match, and here's a family, and here's some real people. And they could be arriving within 6 weeks. It was amazing, actually. It felt like suddenly it had all been worth it, because I think up until then, you know, it had been great fun, but it had also been a real struggle to just get through some of the bureaucracy and things. And, you know, you need to have all that there. You need to make sure everything's as it should be. But yeah, suddenly it was like, oh, actually, this is really going to happen. It's amazing.
We actually, you know, had a lot of initial visits with the school. In fact, myself and another member of the charity, we went into the classes of the children that were going to be coming to sort of talk to them about what was going to happen, and you're going to have a new person in your class. And we explained a little bit about what a refugee was, and the children were amazing, and they were so excited to have a new person from another country in their class. So that was really lovely.
And our family was coming from the Lebanon. They were arriving at Birmingham Airport, and me and Alan and Rachel, who speaks Arabic and is a member of our group, hired a van big enough to take everyone and some suitcases, and drove to Birmingham Airport to pick them up.
Well, my mum's was a refugee from Germany on the kinder transport. So, and it's my mum's house. She's in care now. She's still alive. It's my mum's house that the family rent, which felt entirely appropriate. So I was very conscious all through my life. I've had sort of those refugee experiences distilled into moments, as sort of almost for the ease of telling. So my mum's was at a railway station in Düsseldorf, and I was conscious in sort of the stories that you tell that this was another moment that I was had the privilege of witnessing and being part of at the airport. I mean, a moment among many for the family, but you know, this was a moment that I could recognise. And as the plane came in from the Lebanon, the previous plane came up on the board that was from Düsseldorf. I mean, it was just a little bit weird, given it could have been from anywhere in the world. Yeah, and then they arrived, and then there was a sort of other family expecting a new bride, I think. So there was this kind of very awkward-looking, highly dressed family with their balloons and sort of scrubbed-up children, and then the family arrived, and one can only imagine. I you know what they were thinking and what we were thinking. And also the UNHCR, the person who'd accompanied them, was sort of, you could tell she was kind of battle hardened. This wasn't a big deal for her. This was another gig. She was turning right round and getting back on the plane, I think. So she had her high vis UNHCR thing, and she had a huge amount of different experience, and she was handing over this family very perfunctorily, really. She didn't sort of acknowledge the moment particularly. She just had done her job, another day sort of thing. And then this family were just handed over to us. They had put their trust in us, and we went to a Holiday Inn on the outskirts of Birmingham, which felt like almost a betrayal of trust. And all our expectations of who they might be were sort of confounded in the morning when their little girl sort of kicked off at breakfast, and it turned out that she wanted a cappuccino, and of course, have a cappuccino, have anything, and she went and got it, and then that didn't really placate her, and it was big. It was Rachel, through Rachel, we understood that she wasn't completely satisfied with her cappuccino because it didn't have chocolate sprinkles. So in terms of confounding one's expectations, that's been the journey, all the reality and your expectations, born from nothing really, born from a very mediated experience and that's what it's kind of about, is meeting people who need sprinkles on their coffee, whatever they've been through. And that's so kind of human, strangely humbling.
Kids are kids, and very recognisable.
فالأمور كانت كتير ميسرة الحمد لله رب العالمين، الله يسرها معنا، وسافرنا وطلعنا وجينا لهون على بريطانيا والتقيت، يعني استقبلونا بالمطار شخصين، جود وألين. أنا كتير بحترمهم وبحبهم كتير، هني من الجروب تبعنا، يعني المسؤول عننا هون بالمنطقة. فاستقبلوني، كانوا موجودين بالمطار يعني، وكانت مترجمة ريتشل كمان، أنا كتير بشكرها، كمان كانت معنا. فاستقبلونا يعني استقبال، يعني لقيتهم يعني كتير استقبلونا باستقبال حلو كتير. أنا بشكرهم كتير كمان.
Yeah. So he's saying about his experience when he arrived to the UK and the airport. It was so nice. The welcome was so lovely and warm. And there was Alan and Jude there, who he respects a lot, he's saying, of course, and very grateful to them. And Rachel, part of the group as well, was an interpreter for them there. So they felt really moved by this warm welcome.
هون بصراحة يعني بدك تقولي بلشت حياتنا الجديدة، يعني ناس جديدة، بلد جديد، كله غريب عننا بصراحة. يعني كنت أنا فكري مشغول إنه شلون بدي أعيش، شلون كذا، شلون بدي أفهم عن الناس، شلون مين بده يساعدني، من يعني كتير شغلات هيك، لأنه أنا جاي من بلد يعني عربي، يعني عاداتنا غير عاداتهم، تقاليد غير تقاليدنا. إحنا متعايشين كنا بسوريا وبلبنان، يعني تعايشنا جميع الطوائف، يعني عايشين سوا ومنحب بعضنا وكذا. بس إنه أنا كنت أكل هم إنه هون كيف العالم بدها تستقبلني، يعني في حد بده يعني واجه مشاكل مع الناس أو كذا. فكانت يعني كتير هيك فكر كتير أنا بهالموضوع.
So it was, of course, it's a new beginning, new life, new country, new people, new language. So he's saying all of this was quite overwhelming at the beginning, because I didn't know if people are going to accept me, how am I going to communicate with them. Of course, everything is so different. So, in the beginning, it was a little bit worrying. And how am I going to get on with all of these new things in the UK?
صراحة أنا لما وصلت لهوني إنه كانت بلشت حياة جديدة، حياة إنه فيها تعليم للأولاد، فيها أمان، فيها فرص كتير إنك هون تعمليها، غير إنه عن وضع لبنان سيء، ما في أي شيء من مقومات الحياة.
So when you came, you're saying that you knew it's going to be a new life, but also you were very hopeful that it's going to be a country where there's many opportunities for us, because we had no opportunities in Lebanon at all. and that we can start a good new life, and the children can be educated, and there'll be many opportunities for the whole family. Yeah.
مبسوطة أنا هون كتير لأن شايفة أولادي إنه سعيدين ومبسوطين هون، والحمد لله عم نتأمل لهم تقريبا كل شيء بدهم إياه يعني.
So she's very happy that the children are here, they're getting educated, they're happy. Also, she mentioned, sorry, I forgot to say, you mentioned that you feel insecurity here, and you know, you're secure, you're in. So that's very, very important to you. Yeah.
So there is an element of you've got to give these people some space. You know, they've landed, and allow them to sort of come to terms with their new environment. Obviously, it was really, really wet, so it was limited as far as going out and showing them Cornwall, or beyond Falmouth anyway. We did have a party because it was the father's 30th birthday in January, the beginning of January, so that was great. We had a celebration just down the road here with a number of other Syrian families in the area. It was just lovely. It was food, it was children dancing. That was really, really great.
Well, it was cold and wet and windy. It was, you know, because they came at the beginning of December, and it really was. It was a bad winter, and so that we all felt, you know, we kept buying them warm clothes, or you know, like thermals and things, and but they just, you know, they just always smile. They just have a really positive attitude, and they're incredibly welcoming people. So in those days, you know, we could go, and you couldn't ever do anything for them without an offer of coffee, and I had a few meals, which was, you know, and that was great, just teaching me, you know, how you know, oh, they're great, you know, and you know, we talked a lot via Google Translate, but actually we also talked a lot through hand movements, and we communicated. It was incredible.
It was a particularly bad winter that year. It was storm after storm after storm, and it was dark. And we found out in one conversation that the kids, all of whom had been born in the Lebanon, had never experienced below 17 degrees.
I think it was definitely a very odd time for them to arrive in that cold December. But I think for the children with school, it was actually quite a fun time, because I think they probably thought that school was always Christmassy, because there was sort of decorations everywhere, and there was a Christmas show on. And when they first visited the school, it was like sparkly everywhere. So in that respect, I think it was quite sweet. But it was definitely, in general, a tricky time, I think, to arrive. It was freezing, and the kids with like walking to school in the morning, it's not a super long walk, but they just hadn't experienced those temperatures, and then to be getting up really early and walking in like the sort of sleet, or the mizzle. It was, I think it was full on.
They seemed really capable straight away in many ways. Like, I think on their first day, they went into town to try and buy a replacement sofa, because the sofa was really uncomfortable. And we were all amazed. Like, oh my God, they went to Trago's to try and find a sofa. And we thought, wow, that's really brave. And I remember thinking, yeah, they're people who really want to make this work, and they're up for it.
One of the things that we had to have ready was a welcome pack, or a manual, welcome manual, which again, a fantastic job was done on that by a lot of very creative people, including films. And yeah, I think that the poor family, when they arrived, they were a bit overwhelmed by all the stuff that we had ready for them.
So a really lovely thing that we did to support the family before the kids went to school was we actually went in and met their classmates and their teacher, and we had a little session with them. And then we actually made a video with the classmates to help explain the geography of the school, and this is the library, and each of them had a little role, and they said this is where we go to play and this is where we have lunch. And we showed that to the kids, and I think it was a really special little way to connect before they'd gone there, to sort of break down any nerves and stuff like that. So that was a lovely thing.
In the first 4 months or so, we had a pretty solid team of about 6 teachers who were working consistently, with some with both students and some with just one. We also had enrolled them into the local adult education centre, which was really conveniently close to where they live.
So when the children first started school, it was clear that they might need some extra support in the class. And although they have teaching assistants in the class, we offered that maybe some of our charity members would be able to go in, you know, a little bit and support the children. And the school was so open to that, really welcomed that. And so at the very start, it was super hands-on. We were sort of going in and supporting the children, because also they were leaving their parents for the first time. You know, not only were they in this new, strange place, they were also surrounded by children in a school environment. And so as they got to know us a bit more, they were able to leave. It was like a transition. They left mum and dad for a bit, and then they could come in with us, and then gradually we sort of stepped back.
I did some volunteering in the school to support the youngest one, and that was really fun too, to be able to do that. And again, to see how the kids were so accepting of him, and obviously that's why he's learned English so quickly, because the kids have been really welcoming, I think, as well, which is wonderful.
I like my school. In that school, I read and learn and play with my friends. Yeah. I have maybe 2 teachers.
Yeah.
It was 3 teachers. Now 2 teachers.
Now 2 teachers. Okay.
I always get Shine Award.
You get an award. Ooh.
Chinese star. We can put it Chinese star.
Chinese star.
Chinese star. Our Shine Award I get.
Ah, shining star. Okay.
I think we were just really pleased that the family had arrived, and then we'd got a whole lot of volunteers who were ready to sort of kick in and do all that befriending work, and they were really ready to go, and they were absolutely great. Absolutely, yeah. That I think worked really well.
Being a befriender is not being a friend in the sense that you're mates with someone. It's more that you are, I suppose, not quite like a social worker, but I suppose that's the nearest you could think, where you go in and you're very friendly to them, but in an aiding sort of way, a helping sort of way. So what the befrienders do is help practice English with the family, is help with the children's reading and spelling and homework and things like this.
The befriending group in Welcome then stepped in and started providing childcare for the youngest child who wasn't at school yet. The 2 older ones were at school by now. And that became a really regular occurrence on Thursday mornings. The befrienders would arrive 20 minutes before the lesson, sort out what needed to happen with the children, and head off down to the park with them or the beach. And mum and dad could get off to the lesson. So it was a real, by that stage, it was just becoming a real communal affair. I mean, everything was linking. We share a timetable, so any medical appointments, we'd make sure those were outside the school timetable.
So we've got a fantastic range of volunteers. I mean, incredibly diverse group of different ages and genders and experiences, and that's been really good. And everybody just wanting to do something to help. And then people come and they recognise what skills they've got. So we have a whole load of volunteers who provide English lessons, English support, others who want to look after the kids or help them with the homework, others who might have very specific sort of areas of interest or knowledge around health issues, for example, and support the family in that way.
What I've found, even though I've worked in the NHS all my life, the systems to get things organised for the family have been really, really difficult, and I've had to be quite a pushy advocate for the family. So it must have been so difficult for other families who haven't got a sponsorship group with a specific health lead to actually get their appointments organised.
I think that's the area in which community sponsorship can do a fundamentally different job than any other form of resettlement, because you are going on that journey and you are sharing that journey, and it's having people that are sharing your experience, this fundamental life-changing, family-changing experience, that's the nearest we can get to compensating in some small way for their loss of community and family. And a local council is not in a position to offer that to anyone that they help to resettle. They can meet their immediate practical needs and signpost to other things, and that's really the best that they can do. And it's still a lot better than, but sponsorship is special in that regard.
Well, the council almost, they're not allowed to love the family, or in sort of constitutionally almost, whereas a community sponsorship group, nobody's going to stop you doing that. And that's kind of what the family need at some level, I think.
استقبلونا بالمطار ومثل ما قلت لك وجابونا لهون على البيت وضلينا يعني سفر 5 ساعات 6 ساعات على الطريق وجيت لهون يعني طول الطريق أنا أفكر وكذا شو راح يكون قدامي شو راح يصير شو كذا فالحمد لله يعني جيت لهون لقيت عندي جروب الدعم الاجتماعي اللي مستلمني هون بده يستلمني ويعني ويديرني ويدير باله علي ويمشي لي وضعي ويسجلني وكذا يعني كتير أشخاص يعني بصراحة يعني ما كنت أنا متوقع هيك هالناس يكونوا يعني لهالدرجة بصراحة.
Okay, so he's saying, of course, so was in the car coming out from the airport, driving, it was like a 6-hour drive, 5 to 6 hour drive. I kept thinking, what is it, where am I going? What is it going to be? Who's going to help me? And all of this. Then he realized that really and truly it is the group that sponsored him and so many members to the group that all been very helpful, registering him and the family and the doctors, the surgeries and all of that, GPs, dentists, they took care of everything, and he was quite amazed that can happen.
مثلا مثل ما قلت لك انا يعني جيت لهون الجروب كان الاشخاص اللي مسؤولين عني كتير يعني حرام انا بشكرهم جميعا كتير الجميع كل الجروب مسؤول عني يعني عملوا معنا شغلات كتير حلوة يعني كسروا علينا شوي انه نحن جايين لهون وغصب قلبنا انه تركنا الاهل والاحباب والاصدقاء وبلدنا يعني بعدنا كتير عن بلدنا فيعني حرام يعملوا كتير شغلات لحتى يخلونا نضل هيك سعداء أنا وأطفالي فأنا كنت مبسوط كتير منه أنا بصراحة يعني شو من عملت ما بقدر أشكرهم بصراحة يعني.
Okay, so whatever this group have done for his family, for Abdul Hamid's family, is not, he can't thank them enough because especially because he left, they filled the void that they had as when they came here, of course, being separated from the family and cousins and friends and everything. That was really tough on them. And this group, beautiful group as he calls it, that really filled that void and helped them to get established here and not to feel this separation so much, but to focus on all the positivity that was coming from that group.
Yeah. بصراحة أسوأ شيء يعني هو الحمد لله ما في شيء سيء الحمد لله يعني كله خير وإن شاء الله وكله هيك رب العالمين ميسرنا نحن نقول كله خير إن شاء الله بس أسوأ شيء مرينا فيه إنه يجينا يعني بوضع يعني قبل الكورونا بكم شهر
مظبوط
سكرت البلد وكورونا وناس مرضاني ويعني صار في خوف صار في لبكي ما بقى في طلعة ما بقى في فوتي يعني شوي يعني تضايقنا بصراحة كمان فوق هيك يعني أنا صار معي يعني أخذت كورونا صار معي أنا كورونا وبنتي الصغيرة صار معنا كورونا يعني مرينا بوضع سيء كتير بس الحمد لله يعني نرجع نقول الحمد لله هيك الله كاتب علينا.
So as soon, of course, they arrived, and 3-4 months later, the pandemic happened, and every lockdown happened. So that was really difficult for them to integrate in the community because they were, they had to stay home. And then, like everyone else, it was a lockdown. But also, Abdul Hamid and Zainab, the little one, they both had corona. So that was really difficult.
The thing that I'm most relieved was that we had 3 months with the family before the first lockdown. And I know anecdotally there were sponsorship groups who had received, a family had arrived a week before the lockdown. And that must have been so difficult.
We had to really work that out quite quickly because it was so awful, the thought of just withdrawing and leaving them in the lurch.
It was something that was happening to all of us and we were all dealing with it, the family, us. It wasn't, up until then, the dynamic was very much about explaining things that we knew to this family who didn't know them. And now suddenly there was a kind of, nobody really knew what was happening and we were all trying to interpret it together.
I think we all worried because we wanted to be able to spend time with them and we just couldn't. And again, we adapted to Zoom quite quickly, and they just rolled with it.
People were having, across the board, were having a hard time on account of the global pandemic, and yet we were always conscious that there was this family away from their home and family who were undoubtedly having a harder time, and it was a useful context to put everyone's experience in.
I mean, generally, we felt like we were only just touching the ground with the family and starting to get things sorted, get access to healthcare and school and English lessons. Without English, it's really hard to survive in this country.
The ESOL team, I think, feels a real responsibility because the ability to be able to speak English particularly, but also to write and read it, absolutely underpins the other, their ability to integrate in society in all the different aspects, whether it's job seeking or school or socialising. And I think the socialising aspect has obviously been really curtailed by the lockdowns. So we feel sort of a bit of an overwhelming responsibility to help with that.
تعليم اللغة الإنجليزية هي لغة كتير حلوة وأنا بحبها وكنت بدرسها بالمدرسة درستها كم سنة فلقيت أنا عم لاقيها يعني سهلة علي وإن شاء الله عم حاول إني كمان أتمكن منها أكتر يعني.
Okay, that's good.
تمام.
So she learned English. So you're saying you learned English in Syria at school for a few years. And you really like the language. That's good. So you really like the English language, and she wants to be fluent in English. That's her hope.
Possibly the most important thing is acquiring language. That's the difference for this family between a life of poverty and isolation and a life of integration and a positive future. So helping them to acquire English as fast as possible is incredibly important, and so that was our biggest worry, other than the practical worries and that of just sort of defraying isolation and loneliness, is not letting the language learning be completely derailed by this circumstance. And the little ESOL team who were working so hard right from the beginning were just amazing in how they stepped up.
It lost momentum a little bit at the beginning, but it wasn't long before we picked up again. And I'm sure it would have been better if we could have been face to face, but considering how it was. I mean, this was in tandem with the befriending group who were sitting out on the pavement reading stories to the children through their front window and sitting on the front doorstep, and Zoom story time for the children in the evenings in English, obviously to support and help their English development as well. And Zoom support English lessons with the children also happened on Zoom.
We basically set up online lessons for the kids, a sort of homework club and reading practice. And basically it meant that all members of the charity could get involved if they wanted to in supporting the kids with their learning and keeping their development going. So obviously the kids had their online lessons with school as well, but the school were absolutely amazing. They gave us so many extra resources, which we were then able to do online, and they, you know, pointed us in the right direction of loads of great learning apps as well. They supported us in giving the family a laptop to support with, you know, because it's great, the kids can just, if they have a learning app and it feels like a game, I think it works quite well. And so we had loads, we had a whole sort of routine going on, whole timetable of stuff going on, and actually I do think it's been really beneficial for the kids because they have had a lot of one-on-one.
So we've got to develop an exit strategy with the first family, which isn't it isn't like we're moving away and we won't ever talk to you again, but it's about how do we, as I say, enable them to become more independent of us, and as I say, that process has been delayed a little bit. So that's a conversation with them about how we will gradually withdraw the support that we're offering as an organisation. I mean, people will still remain friends with the family. So that will be happening over the next few months.
They have proved themselves to be an amazingly resilient family, amazingly positive. The kids are an absolute joy, and their English has just rocketed. They've been in school quite a lot because the family are classed as vulnerable, and they were happy for the kids to go to school, and that's been great. That's been really helpful. And, you know, we really, you know, English is coming on. There feels like it does feel like we have a very different relationship. There is a familiarity and a comfort that can only come with knowing someone for long enough. And all of this is starting to happen, and I'm just really looking forward to things opening up a little bit more so that we can, you know, really kind of help and support them to becoming full-blown active members of the community with working lives, which is the next stage, and I'm sure we'll get there.
Well, I'm going to school all day because I need to be big and be a teacher.
Yeah, wow,
Very
this is
good.
nice.
بعمل حلويات بعمل حلويات أشكال مختلفة. فهني جربوا حلويات وعجبتهم. فحابة إنه أنا يمكن بالمستقبل إني أطورها شوي، إني أشتغل فيها أتوسع فيها شوي، وجنبها إنه حابة أكون أتوظف بروضة للأطفال.
Okay. So she said yes. The group has tasted. They have tasted her beautiful pastry, and she's quite good at that. She makes good pastry and desserts and all of that. And what she would like to do on the side of this is you're saying that you would like to work in a nursery. Yeah, children nursery. So that would be nice. That would be what you like to achieve.
في طريق إن شاء الله راسمين إن شاء الله هون. يعني الحمد لله يعني انجزنا شوي منه مثل ما قلت لك تعليم الأطفال ووضعهم الحمد لله تمام، وضع الصحي والتعليم يعني الحمد لله بداية طريق حلوة. ونحن كمان الحمد لله يعني عم نتعلم أنا وزوجتي، فإن شاء الله قدام شوي إن شاء الله بنصير نعمل شيء إن شاء الله، يعني نضبط شغل يكون منيح، نقدر نعتمد على حالنا، نقدر نفيد كمان، نفيد إن شاء الله شيء بهالبلد إن شاء الله.
Okay, so they're hoping also, you know, so far so good because they're learning English and all of that, integrating the community. But also, of course, they would like to be independent, to find employment, you know, and to be able to work, and also to help other people like we have been helped. That's what we would like to do.
There's definitely a capacity locally to welcome more families and for that community to, you know, benefit from being less isolated, but also being part of a group which focuses on integration and community values.
We've just had our application, our second application approved, and we've just been informed that we've been matched with another family. So we could be expecting another family within the next couple of months.
I think the application process was much easier because we've proved ourselves, and the council are very happy with the way that we've supported the family and continue to support the family, because I think the council have to okay the project as well, and they can see that we're actually very good at supporting the family, and so they've supported us for the second application. And the Home Office, obviously, because they know that we've already supported one family, it was a very quick process for us to be accepted for the second family.
Well, it's just enhanced my life, really. I know it probably sounds quite cheesy, but it's true. You know, it's just, I mean, you know, I'm a foreigner, but, you know, I didn't flee to come and live here. But, you know, I still had to, I didn't know anybody when I got here. But it was always a very friendly place, Falmouth. And it's nice to be able to give back, you know, as well. But I just think there is more room for people who are seeking sanctuary. And there's plenty of welcoming people, really. And what's really also great is that more groups are forming around Cornwall.
We've learned that we need a bank of volunteers. We've just sort of doubled our volunteer group recently. Again, because people are really still wanting to help us out, so that's great. And with that comes a lot of work and responsibility as well. You know, you have to support volunteers. You've got to recruit them properly and make sure that they've got all the right training and checks in place before they can support the family.
We have made the decision as a charity that we should have a different team for the next family, a different team of befrienders for the new family. And that's a twofold thing. It means that more people in Falmouth and Penryn are involved, but it also means that some people have spent so much of their time with the first family that maybe they need a little bit of a respite, and it's time to hand on the baton.
Just so looking forward to the next family who will be the completely different individuals, and getting to know them and supporting them and enabling them to, I mean, really eventually for us all to become redundant, and hopefully the family might choose to still want to be friends with us, but I think the role of us is to become redundant because we've enabled the families to live their life independently.
It's been a huge and constant learning curve, and will continue to be so, because no two families are the same, and so we're going to have to learn new stuff and different stuff. But undoubtedly we have learnt a lot of stuff, so we're not the people we were 2 years ago, and we know more, and so that feels good. No doubt everything will be so different that you just find there are whole new mountains to climb in terms of what one needs to work out and discover. But we definitely know a lot more than we did first time round. So that's kind of exciting to have that under your belt and feel like, you know, yeah, we can do this.
We also have the huge advantage of having this family to help us.
Yeah.
And that's a fantastic sort of transition for them. I think that they can be there for this second family.
I hope that there's more families keep coming. I mean, I think, you know, another reason why I got involved in this is there are so many people that are in desperate need. There are 12 million people displaced in Syria alone by this conflict, and you know, I think there is such a need to support and help people who need safety and protection, and so I see the charity just growing from strength to strength, and I hope that more and more families can come to Falmouth and Penryn.
We now realise that a family who is resettled using community sponsorship they have no choice where they're going. They're basically, here's an offer, take it or leave it, and if you don't take it, really, where do you get put down, to the bottom of the pile again? So I think we had imagined that there was more choice before, but we now know that there isn't. So someone hasn't chosen to come here.
And of course the reality is that nobody wants to have to leave their home and be separated, quite possibly permanently, from their very close family groups. And that's brutal, and will always be there for the families that we help.
We came together as a group of people who, the thing we had in common was we all knew Jude in some way, to be honest. And actually we've come together and really coalesced in a really, really positive way. It's probably the best functioning board I've been part of, and I've been part of loads of different charity boards, and it just works really well. So I think there's a lot of potential for us to do a lot of exciting things.
أكيد. وكمان إنه نحن صحيح إنه هون، بس أكيد نحن مشتاقين لأهالينا بلبنان وقلبنا معهم يعني، بس نحن كمان هون بالمقابل إنه لاقين حياة أفضل لأولادنا ولحياتنا. وبتمنى إنه كل شخص بلبنان إنه يتأمل فرص أكتر لكل عائلة سورية بلبنان تقدر تطلع وتعيش حياة جديدة وحياة آمنة وسعيدة، تأملها للأولاد، تعليم، طوابي، حياة ملائمة.
Yeah. Okay. So also she's saying, although they have left family and friends, and which is not easy, but still they're looking at positively the fact that in a new country, new life, that everything is provided, medicine and education, all of that, and she wishes also not only for them but for every family. Syrian family that is living in a foreign country, to them is in Lebanon. It's a different country also, where life is not really secure. There is danger, and they want everyone to be in security, and to come to move out of Lebanon as well, just like they did, and to get this opportunity of happiness in a nice country.
يعني بصراحة مثل ما قلت لك دول الأشخاص مسؤولين عني، يعني لحد الآن أنا صار لي سنة وخمس شهور تقريبا، سنة وخمس شهور 6 شهور، يعني لحد اليوم يعني ما تركوني أبدا، يعني ما حسسوني إنه أنا رح أتعب بموضوع.
Okay, so he's saying I've been here with my family for a year and 5 months, and this lovely group haven't made me have to think about any difficulty or any subject that I can't handle, or they have covered everything possible for me. I'm never worried about anything because of them.
كتير طيبين كتير، لدرجة كمان إنه عملوا لنا يعني أعياد ميلاد حتى إلي لزوجتي للأولاد للأطفال، فرحونا كتير بصراحة. يعني أنا عن جد يعني عاجز على الشكر، أشكرهم عاجز بصراحة يعني.
Yeah. So he's saying even the birthdays for all of them, every member of the family, they've organized the birthdays, and he's saying in his own words, I'm unable to thank them enough. I feel, he's so overwhelmed by their kindness and the way they looked after their family.
To find something so definite and substantial that you can do and that you can make a difference, a really undeniably substantial difference to a circumstance which you find, wrong, distressing, and terrible, is really important. I think it's what we need to find in general for how to navigate life, is how to not be completely disempowered and disillusioned by the scale of the challenges that we all face, but to find ways that human beings can can directly impact those.
I've become part of a community group which is full of the most amazing people, and so I've made some fantastic friends through doing this. Secondly, having a culturally diverse community surrounding us is obviously a good thing. And lastly, I think I'm helping repay society a little bit for being so good to my mother and my mother's family, by doing something for a refugee family, or more than one refugee family, hopefully, and hopefully helping them on their way, and they will, like me and like my family, hopefully contribute to the wider society.
Yeah, just to be among people with different cultures and learning about different ways of life and just being with different people, how can it not enrich Falmouth? For me, it's like we're going to benefit just as much as they are, really. It's a really sort of valuable thing, and I see that as a sort of double-pronged thing. It's a bit selfish in a way, as well as wanting to help people change their lives. It's a thing that we're going to benefit from as well.
I think there are different strands of the importance of it. The importance is to actually make a difference to a family that's been that's lost their home as a result of conflict. How awful! You know, I've got 4 children. I can't imagine what it would be like having to move around the place, to flee my home, my community, my everything. That would be really difficult. So from that point of view, it's a no-brainer. On top of that, the community sponsorship scheme does mean that you're actually building your own community as well. So we're all volunteers some of whom have known each other for a really long time. Some are new friends now. So we've built our own community around the community sponsorship.
Hopefully it shows that, you know, that we care as a community. You know, we want people to be coming over here. We want to support the people that come over here, because there's such a lot of negativity around when you watch the television and what's happened recently with the government about looking at asylum seekers and refugees. And, you know, you want people to see they are welcome within our country.
The world is turning quite inward in many ways, and that distresses me. And I again, I just feel that, yes, England is a small island, but you know, we're quite prosperous, and we have the capacity to welcome people who need it, who are seeking sanctuary. It's just when you meet these people, it just reinforces it. They're just people. I mean, it's really simple.
Accidents happen, but the accident of birth seems to me the most arbitrary and disproportionate one. And there's some tiny balancing of that, you know, that broadly we're so lucky and it's so random that we're fed, safe, and you know, and so many people aren't. And that once you're conscious of that, you can't get it out of your head. So it's a selfish rebalancing with benign effect.
I think it's really important as a world issue. I guess partly because I spent 6 years as a child in what is now Zimbabwe. I've experienced the colonial experience, and I've seen how a colonizer changes a country, and how you know, the colonies of the world have drawn lines and divided peoples and decided where borders go. I'm not saying that's all to blame for this, but there's an awful lot of problems that have resulted out of changing regions, governments, and superimposing your own in it. And so in a way, I suppose I personally feel that for me, I think I gravitate towards this because I feel that I've experienced the other side, and I'd quite like to do something to ameliorate things on this side. And I know it's a drop in the ocean what we do.
Gosh, because most of us don't have, most of us here have no idea what it must be like to live in a place where you can be displaced by such horrors, and to just not have any of the things that we take for granted. Sorry, it just makes me feel really, I just can't begin to think about what people might be going through. And so we have a responsibility to provide as much as we can to support those people in building a new life for themselves after things that you just can't begin to comprehend, really. I think it's also something about about wanting to be part of a country that it doesn't feel like this all the time at the moment, but that has its arms open, and that's why it's important to me, because I feel like I want to say, I want to be part of a country that is like that is welcoming to others, not one that is closing its doors.
I think it's really important to note that a refugee is someone who hasn't had a choice. They've had to move, they've had to leave their home, their belongings, their family, their friends, their pets, their car. They've had to, because it just wasn't safe enough to stay anymore. And I just think that it will always benefit a community. It will strengthen communities. It will make for a more diverse community, especially in Cornwall. And yeah, I just think that schemes like community sponsorship are really important, because they do offer a safe passage, a legitimate passage to find a new home. And yeah, that's why I think it's important.